I'm back, but nobody seems to notice. Which is weird, because I should have an observation system ready. Why am I auto-hosting peanut butter? I do not know who this is. Also, my display is wrong. It's like slightly off. Derp, derp, derp. Hey! That seems to have worked. You should not be seeing that. You should be seeing this. No, this. Ah, there we are. Yeah, my viewer count should be like 4. It should at least be 2, because you're here and the observation device is running. Oh, no! My USB mini cable broke. Or is this micro? I can never remember which one is mini and which one's micro. There's a USB micro and USB mini. Deathmatch. World IPs? No, it wouldn't be a deathmatch. We'd just take over the world. I am familiar with... I have a standing plan for that, because I would. But it's to do with the fact that I know how difficult it would be to tolerate me, and how much I would get along with me. And as such, we would have, probably without even needing to discuss it, very specific, very short-term engagements, and then we would not cohabitate anyway. And the distance would be a means of protection. Okay, so that was a hell of a speech to be late to. Well, I'll say speech, a presentation. That's somebody who specializes in socio-political research and demography, and was talking about the last 2 elections in the career of Donald Trump. Fucking amazing. I came in during question and answer, and people were asking questions, and he was like, this is the answer. And it was like mind-blowing. It was mind-blowing. Holy cow. So awesome. Why am I using these? I don't need these. I don't need you. Oh, man. Okay, so he's also familiar with the development of the Electoral College, which apparently Alexander Hamilton put together and immediately regretted, because the very first time it operated quite differently from how he imagined it would. And then he spent what little was left of his life before Aaron Burr shot him, trying to reverse it. He was trying to get rid of it. He died trying to get rid of the Electoral College because he thought it was horseshit. He thought he made a huge mistake. That's hilarious to me. I think I've drank all my tea. My tea is gone. But there's still plenty of ice. I'm not used to that. What am I going to do? Drink iced Earl Grey? I'm out of black tea. I might not be out of black tea. There might be more black tea in there, but I don't know. I just made an order for groceries, too. So if I was going to get more tea, I would have ordered it then. Oh well, I'll have to settle for LaCroix, I suppose. I'll go grab one of those now and be back in a moment. Hopefully. In the meantime, if I talk loud enough because they're compression mics, you should still get something. Black and fish. I love black and fish. I think you kind of like me contest. I'm gonna try it. Wait, no. Saturday, probably. Man, I really wish I'd have been there for the whole presentation. How I'm going to be cooking? What do you mean, how I'm going to be cooking? You order groceries? I ordered the ingredients necessary for croque madame, which we'll probably do tonight. And I'm dry aging some pork in there for Saturday night. And then tomorrow, there is ground beef and mirepoix, which I'm going to thicken into a gravy probably. I didn't bring the mushroom powder. I regret that. Oh well. I might grab it tomorrow. Mom was offering to bring stuff to me because where she works, she's like 5 minutes from here. I need to put this somewhere, but this tray's not quite big enough. That's not true. The tray's plenty big enough. My computer is too big. This laptop is enormous. And that's the actual issue here. 3. You must have Matt back. Is that you, Matt? Matt doesn't come back in. I'm going to be sad. If there's somebody that needs to learn, it's Matt. Matt can stand to learn a great many things. Mostly because the college he went to was a farce. I just lost my lenses again. I just fixed them during the presentation. Now I can't see again. I would like to see what I'm doing, please. Oh, God. Okay. This is untenable. I cannot live like this. Oh. Ow, God. I hate when it pulls off chunks of the accordion. It hurts. Like only for a second, but like a lot. Have one of these probably. I should have this. Yeah, those are more convenient. But that comes with the price. So I'm not willing to pay. I cannot keep these clothes on. I should have brought a belt. I'm not used to needing one. You know? I'm used to my clothes barely fitting, so I just jam them on and they're so tight that they just stay where they're meant to. Half as dense as an actual pillow. Alright, I don't know what's going on with Matt. I'm gonna get started again because I don't have one. Actually, where's my mouse? Yeah. My mouse should be great here. Probably a little more convenient. Well, I don't really have time or any room for any either. Put this one on the charger instead. Yes. Progress. Yeah. I'm so sure, too. Dyslexia is a son of a bitch. It's always got me doing weird shit. That makes it worse, man. You've made it worse. There we go. I mean, that still sucks. Would that I were left-handed. Or that they had at least helped me to be more ambidextrous rather than less as a child. They worked unreasonably hard to make me focus on my right hand. I had a particular teacher who would get mad at me when I try to remember. No, use the correct one. Wanted me to have a dominant hand. Truly ambidextrous. Bullshit. Alright. Whoops. Where are we? We're doing something weird, right? I was just reading the quotes, I think, basically. I just don't like this paper as much as I did when I wrote it now. Maybe I should just rewrite the whole thing right now. It's only 15 pages. I can't do that. Because if I did, it would be 48 pages. I'm not familiar enough with the material anymore. Anyway, I'd have to reread all this shit that I'm referencing. But I digress. Okay. So a better way to do this would be to just summarize the sections, right? So we're going to start with well-ordered society. As I said there, I've been trying to come up with a better way to explain well-ordered society. Way better than even this. That's faster and easier. Because it's important for a lot of the other stuff I do. Like when I do the neoliberalism, the new stuff I'm trying to do for neoliberalism, I have to start out by giving people vocabulary because people don't know what any of the words I'm going to use mean. Like you tell somebody that something is liberal and they're like, you mean the Democrats. No, that's not what that word means. That's not what that word means at all. American politics doesn't. You can't do that. You can't even talk about it. You can't even assume that people are going to think about it. Like it's going to be a disaster. So you have to do something else. And I have plans for what that something else is going to be, right? But that has to come up. So when I say a well-ordered society here, that's because I'm pretty sure Schutz says well-ordered society. I'm pretty sure that's where I got it. And why I'm using that phrase. But it might be, what's the word I'm looking for here? It might be more like enlightenment, in a manner of speaking. So when I brought that up earlier, and I think that's an easier way to do this. The period of the Enlightenment, which sparked the liberal age, and led to the liberals as we know them now, founding the United States and stuff like that, and France, and chopping everybody's heads off in France, and then chopping everybody's heads off again in France, and then getting invaded by the rest of Europe as France, and then France had a lot of trouble for a while. But what I mean is now they're liberals. France is basically liberal. The United States is basically liberal. Europe is basically liberal. Everybody's basically liberal unless they're communists, because of the Cold War, right? And that's sort of what happened there. But the thing is, the Enlightenment was about, like, as it was defined by Immanuel Kant, was the notion that people could get an understanding for themselves of their role in the world and then choose personally to be a part of what was happening around them, right? They would choose to be governed and therefore be governable because they were subservient to rulership, not by nature or force, but because they chose to be. And that's because they agreed to the fundamental principles which the power was supposed to be using to protect them. It's a big part of what all this is about. The issue with that is that they have to be reasonably knowledgeable. They have to know things. You have to be able to expect them to know things, and you have to be able to expect things of them, right? Well, that's not what happens if you can't teach them. If all you teach somebody is a handful of very specific tasks or very technical, give them only technical knowledge, and then send them out into the world with this extreme individualist attitude, they are not going to think in terms of collectivity, so they can't work with other people to make anything doable. They aren't thinking in terms of, being governed because they, for example, what Kant created was called cosmopolitan law. In cosmopolitan law, most people more or less agree that what is in the Constitution is what is best for society, and work with that, work with the understanding that that is sacrosanct in everything they do in their lives, basically. So, if you don't teach them that, and instead you teach them that they are personally responsible for everything, or worse, what actually happens is you teach them, we've been teaching them to cherry pick, right? There are these things about the Constitution which give you individually extreme power of some kind. You have this entitlement, and you are supposed to be working to ensure that you are able to take advantage of this entitlement. And that's not how it works, right? That's not cosmopolitan law. It's an excuse to be greedy. That's all the difference between, well, I don't have time for that right now. But anyway, so a well-ordered society is going to be one where you can trust people to do that. You can trust people to make collectivistic decisions about society. You can trust them to know when a decision about how society is going to be run is good for people in general or not. You can count on them to vote in elections for people, and for what are they called? Referendums and whatnot. Bills and things like that. Whatever it is that the people in general are going to be voting on in the public assembly, right? Or for the public assembly. Or whatever. And to make sure that they have that. Well, what we're teaching is not doing that. And that's mostly what I'm trying to explain here. So I sort of start at the end because this was originally written the other way around. Because I wanted to end on, this is what a well-ordered society would look like, and according to everything I've just said, that's not what we got. But the problem with that is that it doesn't say what a well-ordered society is until the end, right? So if I start out being like, this is what we need from a well-ordered society, according to Schutz and Gobo and whatever, Golub, then we look at what we've got. It ain't that. Neoliberal individualization. I never shut up about neoliberal individualization, so everybody's going to be very familiar with that. Let's see here. This one is so weird. All right. After half a century of culture wars, Boise State is offering neoliberal alternatives to a political awareness of the culture war and society. Instead of social competence, people walk away with degrees in bootstrap philosophy and a tendency to avoid politics, which is not education, by the way. A tendency to avoid politics is not education, but I digress. Okay. Okay, so I really, quote, okay, so I really enjoyed ethics and diversity, my UF 200 class. Yeah, that's the ones they just got rid of, by the way. I believe my instructor was phenomenal, and she basically presents ways for us to evaluate without giving her opinion. So I couldn't tell you what her political affiliation is. I couldn't tell you anything. End quote. So this is 87, 86. We haven't heard from 87, 86. It was a very close number, though. Anyway, the thing here, UF 200. Here, let me put this up there on the screen. UF 200, University Foundations 200 is a class designed to teach social and ethical engagement. Its purpose is to generate social competence in students. The student, I should probably have said what Boise State literally said about it. In fact, I cite Boise State, so why didn't I do that? I don't understand why I made a lot of these choices in this paper. I just double checked that statement was fairly close, but I should have just quoted them and cited it because I already have them cited for something else. So I just make the inline citation and quote it here. Why didn't I do that? I don't remember why I did it this way. University Foundations 200, yes, the student celebrates that their experience in that class was specifically apolitical. This is counterintuitive, right? Because it's sort of about politics. So how are they learning about diversity if they're not learning about politics, right? Because isn't that sort of weird? The definition of people's being diverse is basically decided by politics, right? So, and at least in the way that they would be defined demographically, you would think that would have some political connotation, for sure. Anyway, the students celebrates the experience that they were specifically apolitical, which is counterintuitive. The student has been taught civic and ethic engagement without politics. So they've been taught nothing of the kind, but simply filled the requirements of the credit hours demanded by the university, paying for the service for which Boise State charges them, while they go on to have an enjoyable experience devoid of political context. Consider the following. 8714, right? Quote, 8714. If they want to sponsor buildings, go for it. There shouldn't be any restrictions on it. Put your company name or organization or whatever it is. Although I guess there's something to that. If you're going out and killing people and stuff like that, some psychotic organization, U.S. military comes to mind, but never mind. Interviewer. I'm thinking like tax exempt, but not that bad an organization. All those organizations are a little bit above board. What if it was a controversial organization like Planned Parenthood or the NRA? 8714. I don't see anything wrong with either of them. That would probably have to depend on the board, depending on what they want to be looked at as. Do they think it's possible for them to both sponsor it? If they say, no, we don't want that, but we'll take you, or vice versa. That's too much politics for me. So this student says they don't care, right? Subject 8714 sees the university's leadership as having the role of political awareness, so they don't have to. Students impose upon the university the responsibility for making political decisions in their name. As opposed to being well-informed citizens, the people subjected to neoliberal individualism cannot take responsibility for the norms and customs, the politics in society, nor should they. They see politics as something taxing, challenging, and beyond their responsibility to deal with. This is an exchange of political responsibility for temporal responsibility, which positions students to deal with society's problems by putting their heads in the sand. They will then wait for outside forces to make decisions, when they do not see themselves as privy nor liable for them. This is in the interests of institutions and is born of the impositions by those institutions upon people who forego their social responsibility. So what's happening is people are in positions where they wouldn't have time for activism if they thought about activism, which they're not going to do because they're taught to avoid politics. They're taught that avoiding politics is a good thing. This person's education led to them saying that one of the most politically important courses a person can take was good because they couldn't even tell you what any political leanings the professor might have had were. Wow. Institutions and impositions. Institutional impositions. So they make you spend all of your time, and then when you have no time, you have to do whatever you have to do to get by. And that winds up being sort of trusting in the institution to meet your needs and interests. And that trains them to avoid thinking about doing the right thing or participating in society in a politically or socially engaged way because they sort of can't. The alienation of the system is constant, and the time the system takes up is excessive to the extent that they have no capacity for socialization. And they're taught that that's normal. They're not even taught that it's normal. It's weirder than that. They are taught in such a way that what they are taught is that time works this way, right? That they won't have it, and they can't do anything. And they're not supposed to do anything. Somebody else is supposed to do it for them in this regard. So they don't make political decisions. They don't even think about politics. Even thinking about politics, if you cause the average American getting this kind of education to think for a moment about politics, you're a bad person for having done that to them. That is how they think. That is amazing. That is fucking terrible. This does not a functional society make, especially not a democratic one. How the hell are you supposed to count on those people to vote for things? You can't. You can't. If they think they have to vote, they'll get mad. Okay. I use Dewey over here. I wasn't expecting that. Why am I calling Dewey? Anyway, we should talk about the quote regardless. So I set up this quote. Ooh, this is a long one. I think many of my classes, it's just sort of regurgitating information. And not that you're not good teachers or anything like that. But I feel like most of my classes have not put that much of an emphasis on critical thinking and taking things away that aren't explicitly told to you. So this guy's coming right out and saying, we're getting inauthentic education. All of my shit is about this, by the way. All three of the papers that I've done are about that right there, what this guy's talking about. And students know, right? Students, it's not even like the average Boise State student is like, man, critical thinking's for suckers. There really are students out there that are like, man, it'd be nice if I had like actual education for all this money I'm paying. Wouldn't that be lovely? I'd like to know shit. That'd be nice. And this happens. This happens. They know. Some of them know they're getting shafted. Dewey's 1938 experience in education shows that the value of education is experiential. It is not processional, rote, nor meritocratic sorting process. This is in stark contrast to the education provided under neoliberalism, which is comparatively inhumane and mechanical. These phenomena limit the ability for education to supply competence. Impositions of the process and procedures do not teach, so much as they train students to fill a role for a return on investment. And I cite Newfield 2008 and 2016, which shows how far that detriment goes, how far back it can be traced, and how the culture war led to it, and how it feeds back into an ongoing pattern of degradation. The Great Mistake and Unmaking the Public University. Temporal hegemony. Yeah, this is where it gets weird. As for institutions imposing advantageous practices on individuals, I use Harvey's 1989 book, Postmodern Condition, to supply time-space compression as an example. As it connects to Boise State policies, according to the Boise State official website in 2020, time-space compression is that phenomenon in which technology and development increases, the time and space required for things effectively decreases, right? The faster you can get from one place to another, the smaller the world is. Basically, is how you put that. Individualization is facilitated by impositions upon subjects, in this case, students, of neoliberalization factors. These are practices at universities in line with business after the neoliberal turn, which is like 1985 to 1995, somewhere in there. That's sort of the neoliberal turn. These can take many forms, These can take many forms, and generally end up undermining higher education for what amounts to for-profit motivation and privatization, according to Clausen, Page, Newfield, and Saunders. For this piece, I will highlight and focus on a phenomenon I call temporal hegemony. Temporal hegemony is a term I'm using to describe the combination of space-time compression, according to Harvey, 1989, and the commodification of time of the individual by an institution, right? Time-space compression, phenomenon in which technology allows for things historically required a great deal of time and distance to be traveled to be decreased or eliminated. As travel technology becomes more available, such as airlines, greater distances can be crossed. As people use communication technologies, like video conferencing, which is what we're going to be doing. I'm Twitch streaming right now. There's another example. They are able to eliminate the need to travel entirely. As people develop instant access technologies like digital data servers or fax machines, society is able to do things faster. Institutions utilize postmodern elements, washing their hands of the consequences by imposing them on individuals. Time-space compression is one such imposition. But institutions can transcend time in ways that individuals can't. The result puts the responsibility for managing time on an individual rather than the system, which is imposing said time. Time becomes a commodity which people are celebrated for using to its economic utmost. Students are taught to use time as a commodity within fixed systems imposed by the institution. These systems are the time of postmodern business complexes, not real individual humans. The individualization of this, and putting the onus of time management on the student, atomizes an individual to benefit the said institution. So that choice of words is very important. Because when I say that it atomizes the individual to benefit the institution, I mean that this thing that they're doing here, which sounds so completely different from the rest of the times that I've used atomization of the individual elsewhere, is still the same phenomenon. And you wouldn't think that, right? Because it seems it's totally different. Now I'm talking about the university forcing people to see time a certain way. Well, how is that itemizing? Well, the reason it's atomizing is because they can't use that time for other things. They can't use that time to be social. They can't use that time to hang out with other people. They have to use what time they have available to them to operate within the system they're meant to operate in, to get their work done. And one of the reasons that this is so weird is because it's like they push really hard to try to get people to graduate early while adding more and more requirements. And then, even though they're trying to push students to do all this stuff, they charge them fees on top of the time that they would, on top of full time. So if you go more than full time, they charge you extra. And they'll still push and pressure students into doing that. And they have a variety of different ways of doing it. So that seems counterintuitive. Why would you do it that way? If you ask them, they'll even tell you that the reason that they have extra fees if you're over time is because it's bad for students to have too much to focus on. So they charge you more money as a kind of punishment for doing it. But that doesn't track, does it? They don't have to allow it. And they're definitely pushing students to do it. So then the fees on top of that are basically just an excuse to take their money. Trying to take the tab off of this LaCroix. It's not having it. The LaCroix is fighting back. Anyway, Hoocha. Oh, terrible, terrible shot. How about this one? Well, I should get some kind of points for that, even though it's very far from where it was supposed to go. Anyway, doesn't matter. Where was I? Teaching estrangement. Yes, the hard part. Yeah, the temporal hegemony is way more complicated than everything else in here. I did not see it that way when I was writing it. I don't think. Maybe I did. Okay. Yeah, free credits. God, I was thinking about this the other day. This one still sticks with me because it seems so banal, right? It seems like there's nothing to it. It seems pretty straightforward. But like a guy's just talking, you're like, yeah, no, I get it. But then if you really think about what they're saying here, it's fucked up. and you could be forgiven for having failed to realize it, right? So what they said was, I'm in my final year. I know exactly what I have to take to graduate. There are certain requirements I need to fill out. Before that, I knew that I was interested in business and accounting. So I would take courses centered around that. And then, if I had free credits, just take something interesting. Last year, I've taken three different history classes just because I think I'm interested in. And they've been good. Just taking them for free credits. It's just something that is new to me. So let's talk about this phrase "free credits" because this really bugged me. I remember when he said it, I was like, "What the fuck is a free credit?" Consider the phrase "free credits" here. Normally, free would denote a lack of monetary cost, but a Boise State credit costs around $750 at the time of writing. I had to say at time of writing because every 6 months it seems like they raise it. The reference is, in fact, not pecuniary, but about a use of time. The normalization of time consumption at a given rate or what a given schedule is important to any labor or service project. This being a combination of training for the labor force and a service market provision for which the customer is held accountable, teaches a scheduling system. This subject, knowing what required courses are, assumes a certain number of credit hours per semester. This normalized schedule is then filled out with additional classes of their own choosing beyond the base requirements for the degree that they are seeking. These extra electives may represent time beyond what the student considers to be necessary or unfree credits. This student is also working, however, So there is an amount of time in their schedule which must be tight. This means that time becomes a commodity more precious than money. Quote, scuba diving is a 1 credit 8-week course. And once every week and a half, they just strap you up with gear and push you into a pool and teach you to swim around. And the rest of the other 1 or 2 sessions a week, they teach you the math and about how to not get the bends and die or whatnot. It's pretty cool. I recommend it if you have a free credit. End quote. These free credits are a postmodern commodity, an artifact of the current state of the university business practice. It costs the student extra tuition and allows the college extra income. However, all classes work this way. The freedom is an illusion. A student needn't be, for example, full-time, nor must they take more electives than are required for a degree. Those minimum electives may not be pre-designated like major requirements specifically, but are by no means free. Consider being late to a doctor's appointment. You are a customer of the doctor's service, but the doctor's time is valuable. If you are late, then the doctor may cancel your appointment, try to find someone else to fill in the time slot at short notice, or charge you a fee. Thus, the doctor actually stands to earn more money if you miss your appointment than if you make it on time. They have an incentive to lucratize their time even further at the cost of yours when they cancel your appointment. In much the same way, the school has taught the student to commodify time. Commodified time is, in the student's mind, already bought and paid for because of their adherence to the normalized schedule. Thus, the time that is not spent on his work to earn his field credential is free to be used on other work provided by the university for the cost of tuition they already expect to pay. When we discuss time from the point of view of a contemporary institution as compared to the time experienced by the individual, we're discussing a separation in levels of time-space compression. Institutions deal in time with armies of clients, administrators, and logistics handlers, as well as, comparatively to the individual, limitless resources. All with time to no travel or execution times with the modern internet, traversal and communication technologies. Individual people, on the other hand, are limited to handling things for themselves or spending time and or money with and or on experts. The time it takes to travel personally to handle things, the basic needs of the human body, which small armies can overcome with overlapping shifts, and every other applicable advantage. So, basically what this means is that institutions handle things on a level that is radically above what a human individual person can do. But then, as I said earlier, it turns around and puts the personal responsibility for how everything is supposed to run on the person, right? So this person is tasked with figuring out how to maximize the efficiency and the value of their time, while the institutions themselves wash their hands of that responsibility completely, and then impose all of this time, even because a lot of this isn't even the rules, right? That's a weird part of this. They're not saying that you have to take more than a full load of classes, but they do try to get people to do it, and they have a variety of ways of trying to get them to. There's all sorts of ways that they apply all these pressures, and none of them have to do with hardline rules saying they have to. Because what's happening is the social structure of the university and the way that administration chooses to communicate to the student body in various ways does this. It does this, where it not only commodifies their time, it also imposes upon them the extreme individualism of an aspect of time that only something like a university can manage. Okay, Let's see here. A person who's currently working, commuting, etc., has the opportunities to socialize by the entities in which they are participating exclusively. At work, a person is engrossed in labor and is socialized by the norms within the workplace, though without focus. At school, they are simply engaging in an approximate labor practice, a pseudo-labor, of earning their grades and eventually credentials. This is also, obviously, different from spending time on socialization specifically, or becoming informed beyond the specialty field education itself, when that education focuses on technical knowledge rather than cultural knowledge. According to Newfield 2009, quote, I'm not doing that much outside of class. I probably should, though. Considering I'm going to be a social worker, I should socialize more. It only makes sense to do that, but I'm usually at work working or I'm at home doing homework. Finishing assignments, projects, whatnot. Yeah, that kind of thing. Personally, it's a bit boring, end quote. 8714 is socially isolated. The atomization goes back to time and time management. The lack of opportunity to connect with their community. They say themselves that a social work major should socialize, but temporal hegemony prevents this. They instead must focus on labor, pseudo-labor, and every available moment. The student is subject to alienation by isolation, and the lack of time for activities and increased social awareness, time for volunteering, gathering news, getting in touch with activist organizations, etc. This leaves them particularly vulnerable to ongoing atomization through neoliberal ideology. Implication. The subjects of the phenomena described above do not seem to be a well-informed public, which can be relied upon to participate competently in society. Rather, they are taught to leave the society to operate on its own. Alienated and ignorant, performing self-oriented tasks. They do not necessarily trust that the system works, but are taught to avoid doing anything, even learning about it. The responsibility and knowledge necessary for competent participation is not only lacking, but students are coming out of higher education with the understanding that it is best to be avoided. The existence and maintenance of public goods requires society to be knowledgeable of, engage with, and take responsibility for them. Let's see. Teaching estrangement. Conclusion. All right. Where's my order, actually? I'll double check to see. My order has not started? Yeah, the order is on its way. Okay, good. I was going to say, that seems a little weird. Have a message. Is this about the thing? It is not. Okay. Conclusion. A well-ordered society requires a well-informed public. In the postmodern now, that's often hard enough to expect. However, the process of atomizing students in higher education results in a public likely to take for granted not that no society exists at all. Where am I? Public likely to take for granted that no society exists at all, assuming that there are only individuals. This was made clear from the way students at Boise State respond to questions about their education, university, and society. The responses of those subjects have been shown to defer social awareness and responsibility on the grounds of normalized individualism. This weakens the potential social awareness for subjects, which are then exposed to the normalization of ongoing culture wars. These wars, waged even now by the government of the state of Idaho against its own public university, which has only gotten worse, but they're dropping the university foundations courses, further normalize individualism, further atomize subjects, and further weaken the fabric of society in general. Business practices, such as temporal hegemony, are imposed by institutions upon people who cannot think in collective terms. They are therefore subject to the collective power of the entity without any recourse but acceptance of subjugation, of subjectivization. Subjectivation? Subjectivation's a word? I've used it, presumably it is. Subjectivation. Unable to meet the superhuman demands of the firm, people try to manage their own schedules with stoicism. The difficulties in managing time have been shown to further atomize subjects into large agencies working in service to institutions. They are not given the time or space to explore society or to act responsibly within the social structures they inhabit, except in ways monitored, generated, and or controlled by the institutions themselves. The results are potentially disastrous for society. People coming out of higher education like these subjects cannot be expected to live up to the standards of Ackenberg, Yerkes, and Veen, 2012, of Boehm, 2004, or Schutz, 1946. They cannot be trusted to participate knowledgeably in democracy, to act in the face of political or social injustice, to represent the interests of groups that they are not directly involved in, or in some cases even groups they are directly involved in, to work in solidarity with their race, class, and neighborhood, to understand the importance of social risk management, to be able to make collective sense of experiences, to be aware of, access, and help to develop collective knowledge bases, nor to acknowledge social interdependence. The ongoing value of social goods, such as higher education itself, is challenged by the mindsets of students it is producing. Likewise, all of society's social goods are challenged by the mindset of the members like these subjects. So that's pretty fucking dire, I guess. My work tends to be. My work is very doomy. Pretty doomy work. Okay, let's see. Where's my order at? How close are we? Do I have... There's no way I have this. Okay. I'll probably have about 5 minutes, right? So how do I present this within 5 minutes? 8:35 now. Make a note of that, chat. It is 8:35 now. In fact, I might make a note of it because I don't think anybody's here. 8:35 start. Okay. All right. So neoliberal individualism, rampant in higher education and current civilization in general, undermines a well-ordered society. Students going through higher education are not supplied with those experiences necessary to be socially competent. Institutions such as universities operating under neoliberal ideology atomize and alienate people into a fractious and socially dysfunctional public. This public has no time, social awareness, political savvy, cultural competence, nor do they realize that they have such a lack. Instead, they delegate social responsibility to the institutions which atomized them in the first place. Higher education thus fails to produce well-informed members of the public. This is a detriment to a well-ordered society. It's also a detriment to higher education itself, as I say in the end. All right, so I'll give you some examples of. Okay, actually, maybe I'll start here. For this piece, I use Barman's 2004, A Theory of Collective Competence, and Schutz's 1946, Well-Informed Citizen, to show what we can expect from a socially competent individual. They can be expected to operate with social, political, and intellectual responsibility, awareness, and skill. However, Barman 2004 also shows the way work and education tend to teach competence in the West today is hyper-individualized. Social competence has elements which neoliberalism obfuscates. This process prevents people from seeing the social dimensions of the human experience. Higher education should be making students enlightened and functional members of a well-ordered society. Society's general well-being is declining in direct variation with higher education, according to Newfield 2005 and 2015. Democratic society benefits most from informed and capable participants, informed voters, skilled workers, careful entrepreneurs, higher wages, more innovations and greater general welfare come from good education. As neoliberalism is taken over, these elements have deteriorated along with the education which primed them. Higher education should produce citizens which in turn constitute a public that is politically, culturally, and intellectually engaged with a capacity to stay informed and think critically. Put simply, I call this social competence. Social competence are the qualities of a well-informed citizen who is politically, socially, and culturally knowledgeable and engaged. That's what we're going for. That's what we're going to try to get. And there's some awareness that something like that would be nice to have, according to the students. I'm already 2 minutes in, so maybe we're not talking about those. Maybe we're going to talk about, so one of the first things that goes on here is neoliberal individualization. Neoliberal thinking has a tendency to atomize individuals through its inculcation, which means that these individuals then have to see everything as being a matter of some sort of personal responsibility. There are also things like personal freedoms that get involved in that, which aren't personal anyway, or freedom. But we don't have time for that. So, let's listen to this one. Quote, there's going to be shitty situations out there. You got to learn how to live with that. Figure out how to not end up in a shitty situation. Also, accountability, personal accountability. Something that I would say is important. It's like, I was 15 minutes late to class. You can blame traffic all you want, but you have to have some accountability for yourself. So this person is not saying to us that you're going to be in shitty situations. They're saying that it's your responsibility to stay out of shitty situations, right? Like if a random gunman happens to open fire and you happen to be one of the people that they are randomly gunning down, you should have thought of that before you went to school that day. You dumbass. If there's a traffic jam, fuck you. Even if you buy coffee. All right. Introduce new sections. Culture war and depoliticization. The culture war has depoliticized us culturally, right? And that's happening in the universities. It's being normalized so that people don't understand that they're supposed to be engaged politically. They're supposed to be avoiding even thinking about politics. So listen to this one. Quote, okay, so I really enjoyed ethics and diversity, my UF 200 class. I believe my instructor was phenomenal, and she basically presents ways for us to evaluate without giving her opinion. So I couldn't tell you what her political affiliation is. I couldn't tell you anything. End quote. So those classes are specifically designed to be about civil awareness and diversity, about how to be a citizen in a society that is not only a diverse society, but how to take responsibility for civic matters, right? And this is what they're taught. Quote, 8714. If they want to sponsor buildings, go for it. There shouldn't be any restrictions on it. Put up your company name or organization, whatever it is. Although I think there's something to that. If you're going out and killing people and stuff like that, some psychotic organization, interviewer, I think, here, I've decided I'm going to do this very differently. We're going to take, here, I'm going to do a presentation one. File, new document. And so, presentation, doodah. And so I'll have some kind of summary for, this. And we're skipping those. Neoliberal individualization, I can practice in this. That everybody knows. Okay. You must take personal responsibility for traffic jams. What a weird thing to say. The network, social relations, cultures and adaptation, political economy, the culture war and depoliticization. Wow, I just want this whole section. You can't have the whole section, my babe. It doesn't work that way. You're just going to have to summarize. But we get to read the quotes because the quotes are our data and what we're bringing to the table is what's important. I couldn't even tell you what her affiliation was. And then institutional impositions. And let's see here. Temporal hagimani. What do I take temporal hagimani? Because this section is really important to be able to explain. Individualization facilitated by impositions on the subject in case of students' neoliberal factors. These are practices at universities in line with business and neoliberal turn. I don't think I need to make those claims. I do need to talk about the free credits guy. Taught to modify time. 6 credit bachelor's degree, at least 6. So what? Okay, I have to say something about temporal hagimani, which is something like time management, personal responsibility, no personal time, normalization, pressure toward no time, pressure toward no time, all caps, because it is personal, social, and political time? I'll know what that means. Hopefully I'll be able to explain it. I can't explain it right now. So it doesn't go well. Okay. Atomization by time. Atomization. We should also do commodification of time. Commodification of time. Which, I mean, time and labor being inextricably linked. You get paid by the hour as long as that's legal. Everybody knows that. Okay, it's everything else. Fucking temporal hegemony sucks. No wonder it's got 3 sections. Atomized by time, temporal hegemony, and impositions are necessary to understand what temporal hegemony is. God damn it. Ugh! It's so complicated. It's not. It's not that complicated. It's just hard to explain. You know what I mean? Like, there's just so much that has to be said about it in order for it to make sense to people. Well, now, in my final year, yeah. Do I have any more quotes? And if so, how do I use them? I don't think my classes do critical thinking. What disappeared? Oh, a buzzing sound. I thought you were just putting Z's up there because you thought that was boring. I thought you were saying this is I sleep. No. I meant the stuff about not being able to figure out. Yes, it's fine. All of this is fine, even the parts that aren't true. Okay, much the same way. Time, contemporary institutions. See, I got too much to deal with here. I can't worry about explaining shit to you. What am I doing? Discuss the form of point of view of contemporary institution compared with time of the individual. Oh, yes. Okay. That's another part of it. Hand washing imposition upon individuals, which they furthermore, in a feedback loop, commodify. That's part of how they do it. It's part of how it becomes lucrative for them, too, right? It's this cycle that they're going through. This is weird. I thought my order. Somebody picked up my order at the Albertsons, and they've driven 13 feet. They're still in the parking lot. What? It was like 15 minutes ago. Alyssa here had my order 15 minutes ago. And hasn't gotten out of the parking lot. Maybe it's taking a long time to load the groceries. I don't know what's going on. Or maybe it takes a long time to pick them up. But that's what this is for. This whole section's about that. I don't know what's happening. It's probably not this important. I don't know why I'm making a big deal about it. This will be information regarding the situation. Currently working on the order. Herbes de Provence, not in stock or sold out at this store. Different size. Any size. Any. Herbes de Provence. Herbes de Provence. God damn it, that cheese is a problem. How do you spell Goya? I hate being a classically trained cook because it's always French and you can't fucking spell any of it to save your ass. Who would spell the name of the cheese like this? French people created it. Gruyere. Gruyere.
Okay.
Oh man, it's gonna be a real problem if there's no Gruyere. Sucks. What is this? Want to become famous? Stupid robots. Okay. Tell the robot to bring me cheese and then we'll talk. I need that Gruyere, motherfucker. Okay, so where are we? We're trying to figure this out. Yes, this is important. I don't do much outside of class. Student subject to alienation by isolation, according to Seaman, 1959. I forgot I used Seaman. Bring a cheese pot. Get a mods. Would that be sliced? I don't need it sliced. I prefer it sliced, but it's not necessary. In fact, I think that it's more typical to grade the graded. It's graded cheese. C- cheese. You grate the cheese because of reasons. Banhammer. Well done, Shrey. Shrey has banhammered the robot. Fuck you, Skynet. Okay, implications. Oh, wow. I didn't even read this one. This one is fantastic. You're definitely doing this. Why is there a question mark after it? Because, whoops, let's not do that. Implications. Process scholarships purely meritocratic. So the struggles of minorities and claims. Column presents a critique of neoliberal individualism. Social risks. Oh yes, risk management. So basically this. I will say basically this at the end. Enter, backpack, schmirp-to-do, doodly-dum. Can't live up. Higher education, like these subjects. Up to the necessary thing. Necessary. Yeah, your shuts. With all due respect. Shuts. Porn bots or horny Skynet for context. Well, fembots and goofy Skynet. What the fuck? I don't know, man. It's fine. The internet's the internet. So we should not be surprised by things being horny even if they're robots. They cannot be trusted to participate knowledgeably in democracy, to act in the face of social injustice, represent the interests of groups they're not directly involved in, or even in some cases groups they are directly involved in, to work in solidarity with their race, class, and neighborhood, to understand the importance of social risk management, to be able to make collective sense of their experiences, to be aware of, access, and help to develop collective knowledge bases, nor can they acknowledge social interdependence. The ongoing value of social goods, such as higher education itself, is challenged by the mindsets of the students it itself is producing. Fucking Christ, that's terrible. Oh, God. Why do I want to be an academic? You should go back to streaming RimWorld. Just forget about this grad school bullshit. God damn. It's so terrible. We're so fucked, you guys. Oh, gee, Jehoshaphat. Okay, so this is about 2 pages. Okay, let's just hit a timer and see how it happens for me here. Hey, work please. I need to be able to see out of these eyes, more or less. Alright, shablow. Okay. Well, we're going to be talking about a well-ordered society. That's what a lot of this comes down to. I didn't abridge this first. I really need to. Shit. Alright, stop. Okay, we're going to start over. For this piece, I used Barman 2004, Critical Collective Competency, and Schutz 1964, The Well-Informed Citizen, to show what we can expect from a socially competent individual. This can be expected to operate with social, political, intellectual responsibility, awareness, and skill. However, Barman shows also work educate tends to competence to hyper-individualize. Social competence is elements which neoliberalism obfuscates. Process prevents people from seeing the social dimensions of the human experience. Actually, maybe we need all of this. Fuck me, rubbing. Higher education. It is the introduction. Why wouldn't the... It's not the introduction paper. It's my why. This is my why. My why variable. What do you got for me? You got my cheese? Gruyere. Fantastic. Yes. Bring me the Gruyere. I should have said no just because I want to eat Gruyere, but it's going to make me sick as a dog. It's going to be bad enough, man. I might even take a pill now. Higher education should be making students enlightened and functional members of a well-ordered society. Society's general well-being has declined in direct variation with higher education. Democratic society benefits most from informed and capable participants, informed voters, skilled workers, careful entrepreneurs, innovators. I want all of this. Neoliberalism has taken over. The elements have deteriorated along with the education which primed them. Higher education should produce citizens which in turn constitute a public that is politically, culturally, and intellectually engaged with the capacity to stay informed and think critically. Put simply, I call this social competence. And that's how it's defined. Alright, so that's social competence. And then neoliberalism always individualizes people. Culture war causes depoliticization. This is kind of awkwardly done, though. What is happening here? No, that's not right. I hate it. I hate whatever is happening here. It's still not right, but it's fine. I can tell who's talking when, and that matters. I'm going to fix this. And then... Okay. And then we've got to just give me 5 minutes and call it good, or I'm going to start with that. No, get out of here. Yes. Turn on the timer. And go. Okay. So, for this piece, I used Borman's 2004, A Theory of Collective Competence, and Schutz 1946, Well-Informed Citizen, to show that what we can expect from a socially competent individual. They can be expected to operate with social, political, and intellectual responsibility, awareness, and skill. However, Borman 2004 also shows that the way work and education tends to teach competence in the West today is hyper-individualized. Social competence has elements which neoliberalism obfuscates. This process prevents people from seeing the social dimension of the human experience. Higher education should be making students enlightened and functional members of a well-ordered society. Society's general well-being has declined in direct variation with higher education, according to Newfield, 2005 and 2016. A democratic society benefits most from informed and capable participants, informed voters, skilled workers, careful entrepreneurs, higher wages, more innovations, and greater general welfare come from good education. As neoliberalism has taken over, these elements have deteriorated along with the education which primed them. Higher education should produce citizens which in turn constitute a public that is politically, culturally, and intellectually engaged, with a capacity to stay informed and think critically. Put simply, I call this social competence. Social competence is the qualities of a well-informed citizen who is politically, socially, and culturally knowledgeable and engaged. The issue with that is neoliberalism constantly individualizes people. Neoliberalism is known for extreme individualization, that everything is about individuals making personal choices, and that the whole world is basically a marketplace where someone's personal responsibility is to make that choice, which is the best choice under the circumstances, in a kind of chess game against the world where it's dog eat dog and everything is about competition. Temporal hegemony. Okay. Oh, God. Culture war depoliticization. So it's normalized for people to avoid politics. Politics is something that is considered unendurable, like something that you're not supposed to be able to get into. It's something you're supposed to avoid on principle. It's something that it's wrong to have to talk about. So we have quotes here. Okay, so I really enjoyed ethics and diversity, my UF 200 class. They've gotten rid of those at Boise State, by the way. More on that later, possibly. I believe my instructor was phenomenal, and she basically presents ways for us to evaluate without giving her opinion. So I couldn't tell you where her political affiliation is. I couldn't tell you anything. This is a series of classes about being civically engaged and about diversity, and it couldn't tell you what political standing their professor might have had. That's pretty outrageous given the circumstances. Quote 8714, if they want to sponsor buildings, go for it. There shouldn't be any restrictions put on it. Put your company name, organization, whatever it was, although I guess there's something to that if you're going to go out killing people and stuff like that, some psychotic organization. Interviewer, I'm thinking like tax exempt, not that bad an organization. All those organizations are a little above board. What if it was a controversial organization like Planned Parenthood or the NRA? 8714, I don't see anything wrong with either of them. That would probably have to depend on the board, depending on what they want looked at, what they want to be looked at as. Do you think it's possible to have them both sponsor it? They can say, no, we don't want you, but we'll take you, or vice versa. That's too much politics for me. A student that doesn't want to have to take the responsibility to acknowledge whether or not their school should have a Planned Parenthood funded building or a National Rifle Association funded building. I would have something to say if my organization were doing either of those things. And I think most people probably would. I don't have time to explain temporal hegemony, so we're just going to move on. There's 2 sections skipped. At the end, I want to say, I'll quote this person. So I think that people should have access to it, but I don't think that education should be free. I think that things that are worthwhile are valuable and need to be worked for. So I don't know what exactly where the question is going, but access meaning we have a public institution. It's open to anybody, gender, race, religion, culture, whatever. It just became important. When it comes down to finances, that's everybody's individual situation. And there's resources for, in my opinion, anybody who wants to do it. It can be merit works-based. A scholarship is basically the kind of reward for what you've done up to that point. So I think anybody can be eligible. It just depends on what they're applying for and where their prior focus was, and whether or not they are viewed as a good investment. People giving scholarships are making investments. I think that free higher education would eliminate competition among universities and colleges, which is not necessarily a good thing, because when you have competition, you have quality. If there's no competition, what are they going to do to be better than the next one? What a mind-blowingly terrible fucking quote. Holy shit. This is just horrible. Okay, so this is way too much talking. I'm doing way too much talking. What if I get rid of this whole section, the neoliberal individualization? I'll get rid of this too. And this, oh, fucking Jesus. And this. Okay, that hurts. But this will be about 5 minutes. Do I have any more? I was in the wrong part of the store asking the wrong people. Glad I found what you were looking for on my way. Fucking sweet. Well, yeah. Nom, 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 cheese. Oh, I didn't even take those pills. So I was going to get up to you. Okay. So I'll do that. I will double check this. Because not taking the language. So things that, generally speaking, I even look at as garbage, whether I like it or not. You know. Why is it running fork on top? Who's the health code violation? You do not dry age pork on top shelf. Bad enough, it's mixing lettuce at the bottom. I mean, they call them vegetable crispers, and then they put them at the bottom. Makes sense? Vegetables don't go on the bottom. Meat does. Everybody knows that. The length for the presentations has varied, so I'm just going to check my email right quick. And shut the fuck up, LinkedIn. Nobody has ever cared about anything you've had to say. Conference information updated. No, that's not the one. App open now. Private exchange. New Mexico State. PSA store. Oh yes, the AABSS conference. I should really fucking do that. Really fucking should. Okay. Pacific Sociological Association 2021. No, that's not right. Conference information and program. There's usually an email from the person that's manning the table. The moderator should tell me what my time is. I've had as much as 11 minutes. You know, I can talk more. Talking more is easy. It's talking less that's hard. Right. Let's do a run through. Reset. Start. Okay. We're talking about a well-ordered society. For this piece, I used Borman's 2004 Theory of Collective Competence and Schutz's 1946 The Well-Informed Citizen to show that we can expect from a socially competent individual. They can be expected to operate with social, political, and intellectual responsibility, awareness, and skill. However, Borman 2004 also shows the way work and education tend to teach competence in the West today is hyper-individualized. Social competence has elements which neoliberalism obfuscates. This process prevents people from seeing the social dimensions of the human experience. Higher education would be making students enlightened and functional members of a well-ordered society. Society's general well-being has declined in direct variation with higher education, according to Newfield 2005 and 2016. The democratic society benefits most from informed and capable participants. Informed voters, skilled workers, careful entrepreneurs, higher wages, more innovations, and greater general welfare come from good education. As neoliberalism has taken over, these elements have deteriorated along with the education that primed them. Higher education should produce citizens, which in turn constitute a public that is politically, culturally, and intellectually engaged with the capacity to stay informed and think critically. Put simply, I call this social competence. Social competence are the qualities of a well-informed citizen who is politically, socially, and culturally engaged. Culture war depoliticization has taught students to avoid the idea of thinking politically and to avoid politics altogether. It's supposed to be something bad and nasty. And yet there are, or were until very recently, classes specifically designed around understanding ethics, civic engagement, civil responsibility, and diversity. I'll quote 8714. They want to sponsor buildings? Go for it. There shouldn't be any restrictions on it. Put your company name or organization, whatever it is, although I guess there's something to that. If you're going to go around killing people and stuff like that, some psychotic organization. Interviewer, I think that I'm thinking like tax exempt, not that bad an organization. Well, those organizations are a bit above board. What if it was a controversial organization like Planned Parenthood or the NRA? 8714, I don't see anything wrong with either of them. That would probably have to depend on the board, depending on how they want it to be looked at. Do you think it's possible to have them both sponsor it? They can say, no, we don't want you, but we'll take you, or vice versa. That's too much politics for me. And in this way, they are taught eventually to give up their autonomy to some sort of social structure, and they're therefore not capable of making those decisions themselves, right? And so instead of taking the personal responsibility of making political decisions, they give up that responsibility to the organization. In fact, they have the responsibility to do so, which doesn't even make sense until you start talking about temporal hegemony, because they do not have time for things like socializing, or being politically engaged, for learning things about politics or their situations. For example, quote, well, now that I'm in my final year, I know exactly what I need to graduate. There are certain requirements I need to fill out before that. I knew I was interested in business and accounting, so I took courses around that, and I had free credits, just taking something interesting. Scuba diving is a 1-credit 8-week course. Once every week and a half, you just strap up with all your gear, and they push you in the pool to teach you to swim around a couple of sessions a week. I highly recommend it if you have any free credits. What they mean is time that they are already expecting to have to spend, but that isn't limited to their very specific major, which is a very peculiar use of the word free, but it's still, in their mind, sort of a kind of exchange. But what's exchanged here is actually time. Time and the capacity for personal choice. Freedom credits, if you will. I'm already out of time. The results are potentially disastrous for society. People coming out of higher education, like these subjects, cannot be expected to live up to the necessary standard. They cannot be trusted to participate knowledgeably. and democracy to act in the face of political or social injustice, to represent the interests of the groups they're not directly involved in, or in many cases, groups they are directly involved in, to work in solidarity with their race, class, neighborhood, to understand the importance of social risk management, to be able to make collective sense of experiences, to be aware of, access, and help to develop collective knowledge bases, nor to acknowledge social interdependence. The ongoing value of social goods, such as higher education itself, is challenged by the mindset of students it is producing. Likewise, all of society's goods are challenged by the mindset of members like these subjects. Whoosh. This is almost 6 minutes. There was a lot of messing up, though. I don't feel like this is really doing me that much good. I don't have time to explain this in 5 minutes either. Go through that just very quickly. Need a much faster way to say this. Students are taught to avoid politics. It is normal to not think about, learn about, or look into political matters. It's fine. Then I can talk about atomization. Or I can mention atomization. I can't talk about it because there won't be time. I can use the word. I can say the word atomization. I have time for that. Alright, this is probably pretty much it. You should really be doing cooking with Lampe at this point. Alright. Never did figure out how to stream from that thing. It'd be really nice if I could. I'll try it. Let's see if this is a thing. I mean, I'm almost positive it's not. Well, I could do it the other way. Let's see if this guy has got anything for me now. There've been a couple of updates to the systems that it uses. So it's not impossible. It's this. Weird. Okay. My observation device suddenly had questions about my login information, which is not something that's happened before. Okay, you. If I plug you in here, what will you do nowadays? now that times have changed. Get in there. Camera. Cameraman.